So did you know that after August 2024, the rules around buyer agent compensation have changed? So if you're thinking about buying or selling a home, this affects you. And most people still don't fully understand how this works. So here's what happened. So as of August 2024, due to a National Association of Realtors settlement, there's been some changes made in how buyer agent compensation works. So previously, buyers that were working with agents had the option to hire them exclusively with a buyer broker agreement. Now, that buyer broker agreement is mandatory. So anytime you work with an agent that's showing you a property, you have to have a buyer broker agreement signed with that agent. And that agreement will spell out how the agent gets paid. Now, as I mentioned, that wasn't mandatory before, now it is. This shift is designed to bring more transparency into how buyer agents are paid. So what happens when that buyer writes an offer? Well, the agent compensation is now included in the offer itself. So I've had sellers ask me, so do I have to pay a buyer agent compensation now? The truth is you always had a choice. Previously, the MLS had a field that showed what the buyer agent compensation would be, and that was agreed upon with the listing agent and the seller prior to putting the property on the market. A seller always had an option to put zero there if they did not want to pay a buyer agent compensation, but it has to be factored into the price, of course. So now, that field has been completely removed. So from a seller's perspective, this raises some questions. Now, most buyers are going to want representation when they're making the biggest purchase of their life. As an example, you wouldn't go to court and defend yourself. If you had to, you would hire an attorney, right?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Even attorneys hire other attorneys for specialties. This is the biggest asset that people have, and over about 86 to 90% of transactions done nationally in the United States are represented by agents. That's because there's a massive amount of legal liability involved with the purchase and disclosure of the sale of a home. A good agent can definitely save you money and get you the deal. So let's say the seller isn't willing to pay a buyer agent compensation. Well, the buyer could always pay that agent directly, but realistically, most buyers don't have that kind of extra money laying around. Some cases, people do, but not everyone, especially after covering closing costs, the high purchase price in the area, down payments, etc. So, as a seller, if I'm a buyer and I want to buy your house, I want my own representation, but I don't have the extra money laying around to cover that agent's fee. Are you going to just tell me not to write an offer on that house? Probably not going to be turning away buyers because that's the whole point of selling your house, right? You're not going to be turning away a ready, willing, and able buyer who wants to make a purchase on your property. That's not a winning strategy at all. Instead, are you going to say, fine, well, why don't you write an offer and incorporate that agent compensation into the offer? Well, guess what? That's exactly how it was done before. The difference now basically is instead of that compensation being offered directly baked into the price via the MLS, it's more out in the open and part of the negotiation. That's why you see downward pressure on those buyer agent compensations. They used to be about 3%, now they're hovering right around 2.5%. So let's look at the practical reality of the mechanics of how this works. Let's say all the comps in your neighborhood are $2 million, and your home should sell for $2 million, and all of those homes had a 2.5% buyer agent compensation baked in. But let's say you want $2 million and you don't want to pay a buyer agent. Well, that's a little bit of a problem, because now you have, one, you either need to lower the price to about $1,950,000 to reflect the buyer's extra cost, or you're expecting a buyer to overpay compared to what every other home in the neighborhood is sold for. Now let's say for some reason you do find that magical buyer that's willing to pay the price you want and overpay than every other home in the neighborhood. Now you have an appraisal issue where the bank possibly won't justify the inflated price because all the other comps in the neighborhood are at a lower price point and already incorporated that buyer agent compensation. Only time where I could see a case where this might actually work is if you had an all-cash buyer who was willing to overpay for the home and you didn't have to worry about an appraisal. But that's probably not a strategy you want to bet on. Buyers still need agents and representation when they're making the biggest financial purchase of their life. And those agents need to get fairly compensated. The bottom line when you're selling a home is you want to attract the most buyers possible and get top dollar. And you need to price your home in a way that reflects that. And just as a summary, here's what's changed from before to what's after. Buyer broker agreements were optional. Buyer broker agreements are now mandatory. Compensations now written into the offer versus being offered on the MLS. So you have questions on pricing, positioning, or structuring your home in this new market? Feel free to give me a call and let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I'd be interested to know, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Just feel free to give me a call.